Welcome to this broadcasting service. Please note the main feature is recorded live and will begin shortly. Feel free to comment on the live broadcast or take part later in our Discord community.
Because it's the silly, stupid, fascinating, weird, wonderful. They're my people, and more often than not, they're the geeky people as well.
I mentioned Betamax. For anybody older, that's the old version of a video cassette. Video cassette is an old version of a DVD. A DVD is not set in the cloud. Hello, welcome to another episode of Faith and Geekery. And I'm sorry, Tim, I didn't warn you that I was going to bring you in live straight away. That's what we did the other week. Thank you, folks, for joining us. I realise we've had a week off. That was an accidental one. And we've only got one more after this before we have a little bit of a relax over the summer. Welcome to another episode of Faith and Geekery. Tonight we are talking about being behind the screen, which is kind of D&D, Dungeon Master, Games Master, and kind of that kind of curator of adventure and things like that. Or I'm sure we'll explore that definition a little bit more. But before we go any further, I guess it's our usual slot of asking about kind of what we've been up to, what geeky things we've been doing, and please put a note in the comments what you've been up to. And I guess first of all, Tim, how are you doing? Are you right?
I'm not doing too bad. How have you been doing?
I'm all right. I'm here, which is good.
We're all here. That is
good. Yeah, that's the basic minimum for me this week. And have you been up to anything geeky at the moment?
I've said this to a couple of people. We finally, after 42 sessions, leveled up.
Whoa!
in D&D.
42. That's a long time.
We've done. So I am slightly obsessed with keeping stats in our game.
Yes, I've followed you on Twitter. Are you on Threads now? Aren't you?
I am back on Twitter.
Oh, you're back on Twitter as well.
I'm back on Twitter.
Yes.
The Freddy things and everything else. So, I have been tracking stats in the Sunday game I'm in as a player since we started. And so we were tracking everything from the amount of damage that players do, amount of damage we're taken, nat 20s, nat 1s, everything. So after 42 sessions, we're now level 7, which is great because it finally means my multi-class character can
just say what level again?
7.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
7. We started at 3.
Oh, okay, right.
And this is it's the longest break we've had between level up.
Right.
Because we average about 12.5 sessions per level up, and this was 14 sessions, which was a lot.
Now, what's the two? Is it experiential or milestone? Is that the
milestone?
Differences?
Milestone, yeah. So if we're doing experiential, then we would have leveled up quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because we took on quite a number of quite powerful creatures, and wizards who have reactions, legendary actions, free actions, which can cast spells and other things. So it's like, yeah, we're fighting creatures with more attacks in the action economy than we have.
Yeah.
And still managing to survive.
So for anybody who is new to D&D, in other words, I guess that is kind of the it quite self-explanatory. Really, that experience is kind of like how many people that you fight and the level of hardness that they are, and how much kind of
the experience level stuff. I'll touch on later anyway, but that's more a hangover from previous D&D editions. But are you excited for all the latest Doctor Who art that's come out? And
absolutely. Well, everything from the Barbie kind of stuff, the Barbie TARDIS, or Barbies.
Barbieheimer as well.
Oh, Barbieheimer, yeah. So that's the new film's coming out. There's been so many kind of films coming out recently, which is kind of quite nice, really. Because I went to see Last Crusade, Indiana Jones, and the Dial of Destiny, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I kind of went, was Crystal Skull really that bad? And after seeing kind of the Dial of Destiny at the cinema, I was working one afternoon. I thought I'll just throw it on in the background. I was like, it is bad. I mean, it's got nice touches, but it is bad.
It's one of those ones where it had a good story, and still touched like the Indiana Jones like supernatural stuff, and then sci-fi. At the end of deep dive sci-fi.
But I actually thought it's one of those interesting things, isn't it? Because actually I find that with some films and some kind of multiple films, trilogies or otherwise, and sequels, you kind of, once you're a fan of something, you tend to have like a little bit more give. You tend to kind of be a bit more allowing of things, whether that's a storyline or otherwise. And I think when it's such an iconic thing, and when you've got such a fan base, I think those fans are hopefully a little bit more forgiving. Hopefully, if you've got a good reputation behind it. I think if a fan base is felt hard done by, then it really is a bad thing. But like if you've got pennies in the bank, and it builds up interest, then actually people can be more forgiving. And I think because Kingdom Skull was so bad, but yet there was a real core fan base and a long generations of fans, really, I think they've actually done it really well. And I think for me, I was happy to go with the journey, with the plot and the story. However, I was the thing that really caught me was actually the amount of chases that Indiana Jones was getting up to as an old man, and I'm there going, right, I'm happy to go into this abyss and I won't give any spoilers away. I'm happy to kind of merrily, I was about to say, I'm happy to skip down.
Let's go on these merry chases.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to skip down the level of fantasy, but I'm now worried about this old man in the back of a little Fiat Panda or whatever, and how much damage he's doing to himself by being smashed from one side to another in this car. And I'm there kind of going, that's really weird, actually. And I don't know if it's because I'm aware of how old he is.
They were kind of doing that. It was kind of getting that way a little bit in Crystal Skull, a little bit. I mean, what I think they should have done, which they've already set precedent for back in what's it called? The first one.
As in Raiders of the Lost Ark, or
that's it. Suddenly just went blank on what the title was. It's Raiders, Doom.
Yes,
Last Crusade. Last Crusade. Yeah, what they did in Raiders, remember where he was, real life Harrison Ford was really sick. They went and do this really elaborate fight scene, and he went, I've got a gun on my hip, can I just shoot him? Why didn't they do a little bit like that, where it's really elaborate, but actually I'm going to cut through all that, and take a kind of thing out of Johnny English, Reborn, where he's chasing that really young guy through the streets of Shanghai. And he's like, ladder. No, not going to jump down that. There's a ladder. There's an elevator. I'll take that. We're going just a little bit of that, into that would be really great. Which would have been like amazing.
I think that would have been more realistic, and I think this is it. I could suspend reality with various other things, but just like the fight chases with an old man, I'm there, and I didn't want to be ageist either. I think it was because I think I was there kind of going, this is clearly a stunt double. This is not Harrison Ford doing this because he's an old man, and I'm sure he is able. But you could kind of see when he was running as himself, there was much more of like a, I want to say an old man gate. There's not that many.
Yeah, it's kind of like again, like that slight suspension of disbelief where like you, like say in let's take Doctor Who, Marvel movies, DC, whatever. When you have an older character in there, there is that like. There's a reason why they can be able to do these things when Indiana Jones is a little bit more grounded.
Yeah.
Like, just a little. Not too much, obviously, but just a little.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's... I don't know if you were there, actually, when we were talking about The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, in fact.
Yeah.
And you kind of like went, kind of Boba Fett without the helmet on is a little bit more lumbers, he's a little bit slower. Whereas as soon as he puts the helmet on, he becomes an agile man of 20 years younger. And what happened there? It's almost as if there's a stunt double. Oh wait, that would be it. And I think that was the thing that I was suddenly aware of. Not that in any of these other films I would have kind of been aware of, but I think it was maybe the age factor that made me kind of go, not sure about that. But
in a similar vein, the Secret Invasion TV series with Samuel L. Jackson playing old man Nick Fury, like, I mean,
I haven't watched all of them yet.
Yeah, it's, for those that haven't, it's actually it's a really good. If you liked Winter Soldier and like the spy aspect of Marvel Universe and a bit more like noir spy like Cold War spy thrillers, this is a good series to watch for it. But it does have basically old man Nick Fury, effectively going from like one fight scene to a chase scene to something else back to back, and you sometimes sat there going, God, he's probably going to be good at jet lag doing all that. And how about the concussion?
I think that might be a conversation for another time about the reality of our superheroes,
which they did in Hawkeye.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Which is also what they did in the comics as well.
Oh, very good, very good. I realised that I've sent a question out about asking about what geeky things we've been up to. David has been on, and he says I've been doing a new liner cut this week. I see, David. I saw that on your personal kind of page or episode page timeline on Facebook, and I didn't see it in the Discord. But you now said that it is in the Discord, so I'm sorry that at the point of which I was putting together the Geeks Gallery, I missed that. But yeah, David also put, join the Discord. Yes, indeed. Yes. There should be a blurb bit in the description of wherever you're watching to join the Discord. So please do that, and then you can contribute and have a chat outside of our streams. So yes, I'm going to come on to our Geeks Gallery, and I'm going to throw this up here. Ooh. And so this is kind of I've forgotten to add any of the labels and descriptions this time. So I think this is I want to say Tom, maybe, doing some figures.
That is Tom doing those figures.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you. Are you going to... so then there's conversation about Magic the Gathering. This is completely passed me by. I did walk into I was going to say a geek retreat, was it? And kind of looked in and was like, oh, these are costly. I am not into it. I'm not into it that much because I am not into it. But I am intrigued by it. And so this is... was it David and someone?
No, that's it's Luke and me, because that is the deck that I bought, which came with its own nice storage case.
That's very cool. I mean, I think as far as geeky things go, it's always good if we could come in with, boxes and cool paraphernalia.
My very geeky thing was that I was at a board game convention years ago called Geekway to the West. And there was an entire section in the store, in like the pop-up marketplace, and it was just selling inserts for board games and storage solutions. So you could get my favorite one. There was it was a Carcassonne game, which had all the expansions, and you could buy the master box for it, which had storage solutions for every single part and piece of every single expansion, including space for new ones, and gave you a little hand-drawn map of how to reassemble your box in a way that it's stored and nothing moved around.
Very cool.
Which was like, I wanted that so desperately.
Yeah, what did we get? We went to a warehouse kind of sale, and we were quite mesmerised by how much stuff. Well, at first we were a little bit disappointed, and then they kind of like, oh, here's a D&D box, here's this other box. And I'm like, this is what we're here for. Very good. What else was there? Oh, David had done some liner printing on an old copy of Good Omens, I believe.
Which is out this weekend or next weekend?
Oh, it is, isn't it? That was going to be very excited. Becky and I are working our way through Staged at the moment. So that's another Michael Sheen and David Tennant thing. What else have we got? How's this 10K?
4K 10th edition.
Sorry, that's it. Thank you. I got it the wrong way around. On here it says 40K 10th edition.
It's Sisters of Battle versus Gene Stealer Cult.
Yes, I'll pretend I know what that means. But it looks cool. The figures are very cool, and that is another one of Tom's
Space Dwarves.
Yeah, obviously
with cork base.
Yeah, so I imagine there'll be kind of I think it's all kind of just kind of basic primer. Is it basic primer and stuff, and that's ready to go sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I've got to say that I've been making minis this last week. And so for our very last, and I think this is where it kind of tonight's theme kind of ties in a little bit, because I was DMing our very last kind of part of the campaign of Dragons of Shipwreck Isle, and so as a nice little treat, the ones on the right hand side, I kind of I printed and painted their figures so they could take them away as little mementos. The only downside is that I had to kind of go for on Thingiverse ones that are free, so I had to kind of approximate the kind of characters, so I had to tweak a little bit, and then it turns out that one of them, I don't know if you can see that on the left hand side, I printed it as it was and it came out really tiny, and so I was like, so I increased the size and I was like, this is still tiny. So I was like, here we go again. And I still don't think it's quite full size, but never mind. Becky was happy with that. But that was my first attempt at printing and painting minis.
Is that a fighter, ranger, barbarian rogue? So I'm guessing we've got an elven ranger in the middle with the bow.
Yes. I think it might be slightly different, actually. Yeah, it was I think it's a mountain dwarf cleric. Now which one's the fighter? One of those is the fighter. The one on the left hand side is the fighter, but specifically wanted a battle axe. And I want to say that it could have been a paladin, but with a bow. I think
I have a number of homebrew rules for paladins with ranged weapons, because out of all the official D&D smite rules, there are divine smite as paladins, which they get as their class feature.
I think there may not actually be. I don't think he's a paladin actually. I've forgotten this already.
The fun fact will stick though. There are there are 7 smite spells. There is divine smite from paladins and eldritch smite from warlock, pact the blade invocation. Out of all those varying smite abilities, 2 of them can be triggered with ranged weapon attacks. The rest of them have to be explicitly say melee weapon attack.
Right.
So if you wanted to make a paladin of Artemis, you cannot do so unless you do some homebrew ruling.
Yeah. I think I forgot what he is now, and that's really bugging me because I should have known it, because we did at least 5 sessions with them. But yeah, so this is where I've been kind of coming from, and this was my very first time. Well, I've done a family DMing, and this is my kind of first time with Becky, but then with 2 others who we were kind of having this kind of experience, and so I had to bring my DM game to it, and I think that's where I kind of brought myself this time. I'm going to bring these off for now. And yeah, have you got much experience with DMing and GMing and otherwise?
Oh boy, do I. So I've DM'd in person. I've DM'd. I'm DMing a game online every other week, ideally, if we can manage it, with some friends. And I've also DM'd on live streams. Twice I did a couple of one shots, and I did a full campaign on a Twitch channel for I think 10 weeks.
Wow.
Which is like a 3 hours live stream every time, DMing and doing a little bit of tech running as well, which was fun. And that was my first. I think that was my first time actually DMing, and it was a live stream game, which was
Talk about kind of is it testing by fire, or thrown into the fire? I don't know. So I think tonight we were kind of exploring a little bit together. I feel as if I might kind of have to kind of explain a few things for people kind of new to it. But I think for me, I've kind of had an experience through kind of COVID, lockdown kind of stuff on Roll20, which is kind of like an online way of playing through different households and kind of using stuff online with kind of digital maps, and my brother-in-law was kind of DMing those sort of things, and they went on for it must have been like a year and a half, and that was fun, and then we kind of started a new campaign after a little while, and we're at level 7 at the moment, and we are trying to find the Ice Maiden.
Rhyme the Frost Maiden,
that's fun. It is fun, but it's hard going at times.
Have you in that campaign, if I got the setting correct,
no spoilers.
I think if I remember the order of the book correctly, have you gone to a dwarven fortress yet?
Maybe.
You would have fought a giant, ice metal dragon.
Oh yeah.
A person who I played games with wrote that section of that book.
Oh wow, that's very cool. I want to say what's the children? Children.
Chartlin. It's
Chartlin,
black. Yeah. It's a black ice metal basically, which is part of the official description. Says it slowly corrupts and brings out the more envious nature of those who wield it, which is why they gave it to dwarves and tried to bring in the Erebor kind of feature with those dwarves.
Very cool. So I think so that's what I've been kind of going through at the moment, and we're actually on level 7. I think we've just gone to the island with the Ice Maiden on for the first time, and that's where we are up to in that campaign. I think for me, it's been interesting making that leap behind the screen, because it kind of challenges you in different ways, new ways, and also it means that you got to know the mechanics a bit more, and I think that's kind of, there's a bit more responsibility, and I think for some people though, they may have this idea that a DM is somebody who you play against, but I think it's very much the case of actually they are the kind of the storyteller, or the person who draws things together. He's the kind of the curator, the person kind of who they kind of curate things and kind of help. And
we're trying to keep you're trying to keep the ball rolling at all times, and I've experienced that as a player where we've sat down, we're trying to do a plan in game, and we get into how do we actually do this? We spend 2 hours trying to plan something and not actually progressing, and it's weirdly, and you'll appreciate this, it's weirdly like youth ministry. In the sense that you want to try and get somewhere, and you have to you want to get to the end of the evening and want to get a message across and whatever, and you know roughly what you want to do, But in the meantime, you're herding cats
Yeah.
to get to that point.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
DMing.
Yeah, because basically, I mean, for anybody new to it, you can either kind of do your homebrew or kind of use somebody else's homebrew where you're relying on other things. You can either kind of use your own imagination and creativity, or you can rely on other people. And whether that's official ways in which I've just borrowed this one from my brother-in-law, Dragons of Icespire Peak. Or you can have other books. In fact, I haven't got the other one here, but you have other volumes and books that you could lean into, which kind of requires you to kind of explore and know enough about, and kind of you're aiming for sort of I would often do kind of like maybe a couple of hour sessions, and you kind of have this kind of point where your characters will meet, and so you're there to kind of orchestrate, dare I say, a natural way of kind of people meeting. A lot of times it defaults to you're in a pub, you're in a prison, you're on a boat. There's kind of sort of some easy narrative what puts you all into one place, and and you kind of sort of work out how you're going to get along, or how you're going to kind of dive into the next step of the adventure. So
it's like quite helpfully, like Wizards of the Coast material who publish the D&D materials, like Dragons of Icespire Peak was one of their starter kit books that they released, like one of their starter kits. They've done like Lost Mines of Fandevil was one, Icespire Peak was one, Stormwreck Isles is one, and they're bringing out one this year called The Lost Obelisks of Phandelver, which is actually tying some other things in as well. What they've got better at in those starter kits is like the first ones that came out, you had blank character sheets, filled out character sheets with everything correctly put in, and a basic, you're starting at this level, finishing at this level, campaign written out in really short, easy things. What they've done since then is they've added extra materials. So how can you edit this campaign a little bit? Here are some actual handouts you can give to players, which is really helpful for them, because we like being given stuff as players. And also adding a lot of extra material in around how to DM in general. And a lot of them now have say like up front, you do not need to know all the mechanics. I think they actually say more often than not, make a ruling there and then, keep it going, and then check upon it out of game, come back later and make a rule going forward at the start of the next session. But it's all about having that time to keep the story going, making a decision, like don't get bogged down in the details, and going from then actually having a great time and story together, rather than this is mechanically incorrect, I know my AC is higher than this, but trying to work out that.
I think that I really enjoyed kind of the one that I kind of led through, because it was just it was based as an introduction, and so everyone kind of approached it as an introduction, and I think I was glad of the experience of sort of saying, look, technically this says it's 4 sessions, but we're going to plan in 6, and that was helpful because we had to cancel one, and it just rolled out right, and I was there going, is this going to go over to 6 sessions again? But I was glad that it it came to a natural conclusion after 5, and it gave us a sense of the way that we play with one another's characters and how we interact. It gave a good kind of hurrah adventure throughout, and I think it was fun, and I tried to kind of give experience of different ways of doing it. So early on in Faith and Geekery, I tried to do a map thing, which was a very boring episode. Don't go back. It was tedious, but I created kind of some hand drawn maps of each of the things, and you kind of have to go in with, and it's like you said about youth ministry, you kind of have to go in with something up your sleeve, because you're not sure what direction everyone's going to go. I think there was a fun story that I saw online about in the first session. There was kind of 3 people gathering in a pub, and a tiefling said, look, I don't like to be touched, and the cleric accidentally touched him, and so then he kind of went, okay, I'll punch him, and it took him out, and the cleric was the only healer, and so before they'd even left the pub, the cleric had died, and it was just like, wow. Session 1, a character's already gone. Blimey, so it can kind of it can snowball in various ways. You just don't know which way people are going to go. But I think hopefully what I would encourage that if you are using one of these books is to kind of read enough through it so you get a rough idea of the direction of stuff, and then return back to kind of session 1 sort of stuff of saying, well, actually, this is the sort of place. Have things already pre-done up your sleeve just in case. So prepare for 1 session, but kind of explore maybe 2 sessions worth of stuff.
So the best bit of advice I ever got about if you're running, so effectively there are 3 separate technically there's 4 separate kinds.
5 separate. No.
There are 4 separate kinds of DMing games. There's running a one-shot, which is it's a 1, maybe 2 session game, really small, really easy, small stakes, really good. You know what you're doing. It's meant to be done in 1 day, and that's it. Then there's the Adventures League, which is a very particular kind of play from D&D, where you have to make your characters in a certain way, and you have to level them up in a certain way, and you can at certain levels you can buy items with a certain amount of coin and experience, but you can take those characters and play them in other people's games within Adventures League, and likewise as Adventures League DM, you can run other people's things, and they bring out new modules and new games based on the current story, and it's very involved. Then there's the 2 main ones that everyone will really do, which is the published materials and the homebrewing your own game. Homebrewing your own game, that's fine. You've DM'd a little bit, or you have a particular story in a world that you created, and you just do what you want. Go out and do what you want. With published materials, it's because of the way they're written, it's sometimes really difficult to intertwine player characters into the narrative of the story unless you're really deliberate about it. Because it's more about the story of that story of that book, with the players enacting that story out, whereas in a homebrew world, it's more your players are already invested in a little bit, and they're exploring the world, but they are the focus. But the best bit of advice I ever got was the game I DM'd on a live stream was called Courts of the Shadow Fae. It was for levels 9 to 15. And it's basically Bridgerton meets Fae, but dark Fae. You had all the Fae lords and ladies. You had I included Law and Order Goblin Court, and we had a whole episode dedicated to legal proceedings of Goblin courts. It was fun. It was brilliant. We had a ball. So all the characters got to spend
cool.
we got to spend an entire session of them in character designing their own outfits for this ball. But it was a very narrative heavy, social progressing game with less combat, which is very different for most published D&D stuff. But the best advice I've got was from a friend of mine named Nat, who is a professional DM and writer and homebrewer and publisher and everything like that. He basically told me, whenever you get a published module, pick it up and just read it like a book. Read it from start to end, and then once you finished it, sit down and just sketch out what you can remember. Because the stuff that you can remember is going to be the key things that you want to hit. Everything else, you can look at later, but sketch that out and work from your sketch rather than playing the game you're going to this town, quickly looking for the page for it and finding all that. When actually, if you roughly know what the story is, you know where you want to kind of maneuver it a little bit. So you're not following the really rigid, we're following this as the module is written. It's actually, you've skipped an entire chapter, but
Yeah.
you've got to the town still, so let's just go to the town and go from there. But that advice has really stuck with me when I've been doing all my prepping for games and stuff like that. It's like, read a module, write out the key bits, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because I think for me, I was aware that whilst I read the books, I was there kind of going, actually, this doesn't make logical sense to me. I would put various things in different places. So it was really helpful for me to read it through, and then to kind of either asterisks or put little kind of page kind of bookmarks in, just so I knew that in that session I was going to need to flick over to that page, or otherwise. And there was a little bit of, and I think the great thing is that, especially if you're going in with a homebrew, or like with the starter campaigns things, people are going in fresh faced and kind of happy to kind of have a bit of flexibility, have a little bit of there's a little bit where I was there going, I think you saw this boat maybe, and like one of the cobots had seen it 10 or 20 years ago. I was like, I can't remember. And made a bit of a joke about it. I then kind of took a moment, found it. I was like, yeah, it's fine. It was actually 15. And that was, and it kind of moved on. And I think people can be forgiving if you're doing it with friends, and there isn't kind of people who are sticklers in it. But I thought it was a really good way in, and people were there for the adventure. And what I think I found really helpful as well for me, and what advice I've been given, is about doing a session 0, where you can kind of talk about, and that's most important, to talk about what our expectations are, our hopes are, what sort of things are on the books, what are off the books, what sort of things are
safety tools. So it's been if you've been around the TTRPG, which is a tabletop role playing game for those that don't know, TTRPG space in social media for the last 5 years. One, you've survived. Congratulations. It is a very interesting place right now. But one of the greatest things that came out of it was actually recently was the kind of inclusion of session 0, but also safety tools, which was a form fillable PDF. It's like 1 page, and it's like, you basically you don't have to put your name down because it's going to be anonymous anyway, and you put down, it's a list of all the common phobias, fears, and things people will have issues with. And you put green, I'm okay with this in my game. Yellow, this is getting like the line. This is getting to the line for me, but this is like situational. Red, no, don't come in near me. So like, I've been in games where we have the green, yellow, red cards when we're in game. So especially when you're on a stream, like, you may not be able to like look at all the chats because you've got, say, 1 chat with players, 1 chat with the public one, plus you're live, and you can't really suddenly like just hop off and message someone and come back on. So what we do is, if we're coming to a point in a game where we're coming up to one of those yellow bits, we're like, this is a really heavy scene in character. Right, just quickly flash up the green if we're all still okay with this, or yellow. So like with the safety tools, with like yellow, it's kind of like, we need to, like, after the scene is done, you lines and veils, like, you draw it to a close, or it fades to black, or the camera pans off into the stars away from the bed that the dwarf may be getting into, or that kind of thing. That's the kind of the yellow stuff. And red, you just won't even have it anywhere in the game. So like, common ones in most games I do are no child endangerment, no homophobia, no transphobia, no slaves, rape, anything like that. We don't have any of that in my games. And even like any kind of romance, sexuality kind of stuff, we go, okay, that's a we'll line and veil that and do the nice, tasteful pan away to the stars at that point. That's been a really good thing to bring into games, because it makes the table safe. And having a safe table, especially for like with a group of friends or even people you don't know, actually, you're more likely wanting to be involved in it if you feel it's a safe space. I mean, like, we talk about this in like churches and like when we try and do ministry and outreach. People are more likely to want to engage and open up if it's a safe space for them to be in. So having something like that in a session 0 at the outset.
Yeah.
It's a contract between all the players and the DM to actually go, okay, here's how what all we're going to agree about. Now we've got that safety stuff going forward. What are we going to get excited about? What chaos are we going to bring with our characters?
Yeah, I think that's good, and I think it's interesting that you kind of talked about kind of church in that and kind of sweeping towards, because I think this is where I kind of want to lead the conversation a little bit more towards now. Is that, again, I've said this before, but kind of growing up in the 80s, my parents very much had a case of oh yes, Dungeons and Dragons is of the devil, and it's just like, oh, okay. If I'm honest,
Satanic Panic of the 80s, Lowell.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because they're kind of going, yes, it's horrible, but now I'm slightly intrigued. If you just kind of not talked about it, and they're going to go, what does it mean? How does that get involved? But then, kind of interestingly, my older brother wanted Hero Quest, and my parents are there going, yeah, that's cool, and they're kind of going, oh, is that not just Dungeons and Dragons? It's just another brand of Dungeons and Dragons, isn't it? We were okay to watch the cartoon as well, the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon of the 80s. And it was just like, ooh. And kind of eventually asking my parents, like, well, it's because everyone was talking about it and it was kind of evil in that kind of... They weren't saying it was evil. They just heard other Christians talk about it. And I think then kind of I got into Space Crusade, and it was just like, actually this was fine, because actually we knew it was a creative space and just a game like any other computer game where you'd have an adventure and you'd go up against a baddie. I think if it was talking about the devil and demons, then I think we would have been a bit uncomfortable. And so that is one of my kind of bits in as a player. I kind of go, I actually that's a red card for me.
Don't play through Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus then.
Right, okay.
Like that entire, it's not really spoilers, because if you've seen the cover art, it's within the first session, you're in a city that's suddenly plunged into hell, and you have to go through hell. It's also weird. They also bring in a weird Mad Max element where you have
welcome to the Thunderdome.
you have Mad Max style machines powered by soul coins.
Oh, right, okay.
It's weird. I find it really weird though, because I for obvious reasons was not around in the 80s. But
Blaster.
But I had
Mad Max 3.
But I had a
R.I.P. Tina Turner.
I had a lot of friends who I've started playing in the last within 10 years. I had a lot of friends who I met playing D&D online who were all Christians, and a lot of them were ordained or working for some kind of church organization in some capacity. Which I found really weird. Where I'm I mentioned some people where I was working oh, I play D&D. They're like, oh, it's the devil. It's the devil. And I'm like, yeah, let's just go talk to the Southern Baptist, Presbyterian, Unitarian, and a few other people that I play games with at weekends and talk to them about that. And it's actually at one point I was chatting with a couple of friends about this, and we've had some really good in-depth conversations about our own faith and while playing it out. The obvious one, playing one of the things I do as a player is I always play a character who has a faith. Which is either which is kind of reflecting more my own, at that point, journey through faith anyway. Which is really weird. But then talking to people who are DMing games doing this, there's an entire one of the published modules is called Mythic Odyssey of Pharos, which is the Magic the Gathering setting in a D&D rules, because Wizards of the Coast got to have that cross promotion going on.
Right.
But it's set in a very magical fantasy D&D-esque Greece. But they actually have piety rules about the more faithful you are as a character, the deeper your bond with your deity, you get bonuses and boons to your character.
Oh, okay.
Which I've always found really weird and want to introduce into all my games. So I'm kind of I would really love to have that Constitution bonus. Please, God, that would be really nice. It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
I can boost my charisma, and that, and also like just as a
Help.
general. That also is a general thing. Like, I also like when I also have like in every game I've DM'd, I've always had a priest character who's always a bard in all my games.
Okay.
Because let's be honest, clerics are like the ordained people in real life. They ain't clerics; they're bards. Because we have to be really good at public speaking.
Yeah,
we're jack of all trades.
yeah.
Literally jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And we have to do a little bit of carousing and stuff and to get people going. And we don't always know all the answers, but we know somebody might know how to find it.
Yeah,
That's a bard.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting because I've been avoiding clerics like the plague because I'm just like, no.
That's a spell. That's a spell they can cast.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I find it interesting because kind of I've been playing different characters where they haven't really had a faith or it's a bit more subtle. But what is really interesting is how I kind of delve into the character of each of them and kind of give myself. So the very first one was a sorcerer with wild magic. So that was fun. I had a D100. Basically, is it every encounter or every day? Or
every time you cast a spell which uses a spell slot, you have to roll a D100.
And basically, it's hilarious. I love it. Yeah.
Like one of them's like you one of them's you lose all your hair, you turn blue, you cast a third level fireball centered on yourself. Which is
that was the one that got me. That's the one that got me. Which one is it? Where's the time? Is it in the player's handbook or is it in the
player's handbook? Sorcerer section, and I think it's the second sorcerer subclass. And it will be on the last page before you get onto warlocks. And yes, right. I am that sad. I know whereabouts it is exactly.
I'm trying to work out where it is. Chapter 7. I need to find a page. I need a page number. Yeah. Anyway, we won't go into it. It'll be too boring for people online.
I found it.
Oh, you have.
So roll D100. I rolled a 21. Creatures have disadvantage on saving throws against the next spell that you cast in the next minute. That involves a saving throw. That's actually pretty good.
I think anyway, for me, it was interesting because this character basically there was just an air of randomness and kind of outcome, and unfortunately he died because of the fireball centered on self, and we're in a dragon's not lair, like a crypt, and we were all quite close proximity. Fortunately, there was an NPC who was there to drag others to safety, but my guy was well and truly crisp. And then I had to kind of come in with a ranger, and then kind of my latest one is a barbarian fairy. And I think I wanted to challenge myself with the barbarian fairy to kind of go for a completely different characteristic to myself. And I think I've really kind of I've enjoyed all three characters, and I just kind of like this kind of. Just like in a book, you can kind of explore themes and kind of things together. And I don't intentionally go in with them. I just kind of go, okay, I wonder how this person's going to respond to this. And I try and not do anything meta. I realise, and when we explain this for D&D, you try and not, as a person playing the game, kind of try and guess things or kind of drive the story.
So the really good example for this is if you're playing through a published material, you roughly know what's going to happen based on the title and the blurb they give you. So, for example, Curse of Strahd is a really famous module. It's really good. I've never played it all the way through, which I really want to at some point. But it's basically you are put in fantasy horrorland, going against werewolves and vampires. So, meta player would go, oh, I should bring a cleric. I should bring a paladin because they're all very good against undead. For example, that's like a really meta way of doing this. Or if you're in a game where you know you're going to be underwater quite a lot, you bring characters that can breathe underwater.
I think it's like you kind of thinking through it from your own kind of perspective and maybe influencing or trying to influence the game beyond your characters.
But from a DM perspective, though, on that, is like is a way to like kind of subvert the meta a little bit. Oh, getting all this subversion of the meta's going. Would be to so if I were to run a campaign like Spelljammer campaign, which has been released last year, which is
space D&D,
basically. Space D&D with pirate ships. In space. Like I would if it basically says if you float away from your ship, you are in the vacuum of space, and you will die because it's the vacuum of space. So I'd be like, right, well, every character that is on this ship will have this item straight away, which is basically air bubble. You put it on your head, you can breathe in space. There you go. Like every character will have that straight away. So when I do character creation for like with my players, oh, the child's awake. When I do character creation with my players, I always say to them, right, well, you can have one common magical item, and one uncommon magical item, and that's that. If you turn around to me as a player, and like I had one player who I'm running a game for, they really wanted to be a bard that used a harp as a bow. I'm like, okay, your harp is a bow. There you go. And it's we managed to find some stats for it, and which basically just say, hey, your short bow is also a harp. Let's go that way. But like as a DM, it's the balance is always you want to kind of like enable your players. I'm a very good enabler of my players. I like to believe I'm a very good enabler as people. That's why I work for churches. Like you want to enable your players. So you want to enable a good story, and sometimes you want to give your players like items and stuff that are going to make them a little bit overpowered, so that make them a little bit cocky. Or you want to give them this really powerful magical item, but you want to give them a detrimental effect with that item because either one, it will make them question
skills.
Yeah, you want to kind of balance it out a little bit. What I like with that is you want to give your players scope to do things, and they will be really creative and do things. What happened in one of my last games I was playing with? Well, like one of the things I gave my players in my Shadowfey game, I gave every player a magical item. One of them got a talking book, which was really great because actually that book was the "Hi, DM on your shoulder here. You need to know about this." That was the premise of that book anyway. But I gave one of our players who was playing a bear druid, a barefoot druid, named Honey. I gave them a plant pot of awakening. Nice. And basically, you plant anything in that plant pot, 1 week later, it will become an awakened plant. So for like 1 week in the campaign, suddenly they had an awakened shrub child going around the game with them. And because it's me, child is plot armored up. There's no way you can kill them, damage them, do anything. So they just have a little baby Groot going around with them the entire rest of that campaign.
That's very sweet. Yeah, I think I think I quite like the fact that you can kind of explore these characters and kind of equip characters, and I think just as you were saying earlier about kind of the way that then you kind of go, okay, God, can I have a charisma upgrade? I think I just quite like it because it allows you to kind of be that creative type, the creator. And explore those sort of themes, and you suddenly realise how complex things can be. Even such as like a straightforward campaign can go off on so many tangents.
I have so many books on writing campaigns, writing worlds, homebrewing worlds, and the thing that I've loved doing more recently. There's two things I really love. One is homebrewing rules. So, for example, you got a paladin who is devoted to a god of the hunt, but uses bows and arrows. Right, let's homebrew all divine smite spells. They can go off on your ranged weapons, because rules as written, you can't do that. But it makes sense to your character, so let's allow that. Or say, for example, there's some like optional rules from some extra stuff I've bought. where it's like you're a. The interesting one I find is you can be an intelligence-based cleric,
Right.
which I really, really like the look of, only because in my head it kind of goes, okay, you're a cleric that's gone to seminary and has studied really hard and knows everything you need to know about God. But how do you experience God?
Yeah.
Which also, this is why religion is an intelligence-based stat in Dungeons and Dragons. But so like putting those optional rules in is brilliant. And the other thing I've been doing with the current campaign that I do on weekends is do collaborative world building with them as a DM is brilliant. It's like, so the DM turned around to me and we were chatting and he was like, hey, we're about to go into your home country. We're about to go to these towns. Has your character been there? What would you, as a player, like to have shown in this town? So we effectively created, over a number of messages going backwards and forwards, the entire like cultural backbone of this society collaboratively. Which was great for me from bringing in the meta a little bit. Me as a meta player going, okay, I know as a player, because I've grown up in this fantasy country, which was Fantasy France. I've grown up in Fantasy France, so I know what is happening in Fantasy France. But also, as a player, my character is countercultural to this, so I'm now going to rebel against everything I've just instilled into Fantasy France. Which is basically, I made Fantasy France incredibly bureaucratic, which like they have like 50 pages of red tape to like get a license to park your boat anywhere. But at the same time, there is no such thing as a soup kitchen or a restaurant. It's just there are basically just like public houses everywhere where anyone and everyone, no matter social stance, income, whatever, will all sit down and have the same meals. Because the big thing of that culture was that you can learn something from everyone around you, and it's taken the France is full of philosophers. Let's say if Fantasy France, everyone is a philosopher in Fantasy France. So let's have them all melding.
No offense to the French,
food.
by the way, today.
No, in no way are we offended to the French. It's like ingrained in our DNA. But like but it was like that's what we did. So we did like really good collaborative world building, which was then we developed a little bit more with like my warlock in that game has a really kind of like more faith-based piety with their patron. Like developing what that looks like in character has been really interesting to look at, and then from a DM perspective, like taking what I'm experiencing as a player and applying that in other games. Like I think that I used to do some chats like I used to play in a game which was a Savage Worlds game, which is a different setting. Like it's a different system, but you can use any setting you like on it. So we were doing space cowboys, and every player in that game also DM'd a D&D game. And we were sat there like after the stream chatting about this, and we were all kind of like sharing our stories, what we're doing in games, sharing ideas. And the big thing we had was like drawing in like the best thing about being a DM is that you can have free license to rip every single bit of pop culture you love and put it into your game. Which is brilliant, but also you can learn some more stuff about that as well. So if there's a particular thing that you like they always say like if you want to learn about if you like a certain director's style, you can see that style in all their stuff. And you can see people trying to replicate that style. It's the same in D&D, where you can look at certain things going, okay, let's take that moment and see how that would work in my game. So one thing I really love doing, like one thing that I've seen the stream games, which I've done being part part of, was like sitting down and on stream saying what's been like one of our favorite moments in character. And sharing that with everyone else, because that's a good way to debrief and share with people as players what we've been experiencing in the game. Which, bringing that back to the church angle a little bit, is also a really great thing to be like, you know, it's a simple thing, like, you know, you when like in youth group, or then like some of the kids would be like, hey, I really enjoyed that bit, I didn't get anything else, but I enjoyed that bit. And like that kind of feeling, and that kind of like, I know, like as a youth worker, I was like, they listened to that bit. That is, on one hand, good for me to know, because I know when they checked out. So that's on me to reflect on that. But also, they took something away from this, and they're thinking about that bit in particular. And like applying that in a DMing sense is like, okay, what are they picking up on in the sessions, and what are they being drawn to? Because especially if you're a new DM and you suddenly think you have to do everything perfectly, you don't. And you suddenly think you have to do like every combat, every exploration, every rule, you don't. You pick up on the things that your players are interested in. And you navigate a little bit more to what they're interested in. And then you expand on that, and you become really great at that while picking up the skills as you go.
I'm aware that we're nearly out of time, but I wanted just to share a little bit for me, was about my kids playing and me DMing for my kids, and we kind of had kind of certain rules that we kind of adhere to, session 0, that kind of stuff. But for me, I was aware that we sort of talked about kind of knocking people out and otherwise, and the first thing that my daughter wanted to do was cut somebody's head off, and I was like going, it's not going to knock people out, is it? You know, and we're kind of interestingly kind of working through the narrative, the story together, and then I kind of realised that actually suddenly they were just trying to kill everything, and so therefore I was kind of then trying to kind of leave doorways open for them to explore other things, and I think that was suddenly it kind of lifted it from being just some sort of kind of game of just attacking and killing, or knocking out, to suddenly kind of investing or being aware of the characters, and so we had a couple of kobolds that were messing around, and rather than killing them, one of them weed itself, which the kids thought was hilarious, and then kind of they started a dialogue with it, and in the end they gave it a second chance, and kind of so it now kind of works in the local pub as a server, and there's a little chwinger as well that kind of walks through walls and kind of collects the cutlery and takes it through to the kitchen, and it's just these little kind of ways of which these kids have kind of kind of approached the story and kind of learnt a little bit, and they've taken other things away rather than just kind of going, I've got a stabby thing and I'm going to attack that person. It's them kind of just exploring different themes of what it means to be heroes, what it means to kind of help and rescue people, and it isn't just about killing. Don't get me wrong, they like to do a lot of the knocking out,
I mean,
or otherwise,
and that's one of the downsides of D&D as it is, because D&D itself was started as a military tactics game, and so having the experience tied to combat is still prevalent now, where if you're going by like every stat block has a monster which has an XP count of how much it's worth XP wise, so you're incentivized from as a player, you're meta incentivized to kill more things, because more things equal more levels. So there's been in recent publications from Wizards in recent years, they've been trying to step away from that, but that's part of their history, where there's been like others, like Cobalt Press do some really good third party stuff, which they actually award more XP if you do the talking route out of a combat rather than going into combat, which is incentivizing the players to, okay, we don't have to fight more.
What do we? We did a Goblin Fortress, and rather than trying to go in for an outright assault, we came in as a delegation, and so our bard was playing the bagpipes and kind of proclaiming one of us, I can't remember who it was, I think it was even in a non-playing character, as the diplomat coming in, and the bard kept on rolling kind of 19s, 20s, and getting past absolutely everybody, including the point of where we got a tour of this fortress, and we're like, right then, let's do this, and it was, and I think for me that was a longer lasting memory than if we had just gone in and tried to swipe things and otherwise, and we got our DM to do a funny voice, which was also very good as well.
My favorite thing as a player was like we managed to do a prison break in character. The DM said to us afterwards he planned for like 3 sessions, multiple combats, all this stuff. We broke into a prison, broke out 100% more prisoners than we were planning to in the first place, and escaped in a single session with no one being knocked out or attacked.
Wow, that's very cool.
And that was only because like we planned something, executed it, but our focus as characters at that point was, okay, as characters we're not going to be killing anyone because we don't want to draw attention for certain reasons. And actually that has become really memorable to us because actually we didn't go in and kill everybody. In fact, if you look at the stats that we haven't actually killed that many people. Because when you think about it, some characters, they kill a lot of creatures. And that, like, from a faith perspective, I know I was having a chat with one of the D&D writers on Twitter about this years ago, and he had a realization as a writer while he was playing that something, my rogue has killed a lot of people, like hundreds of people. What kind of effect does that have on me? And the effect actually had was, as a writer, he started writing campaigns differently and started DMing differently to allow more experiences where killing wasn't the only option.
I think we're going to finish it there, and I think that was a really good kind of point of which that even if you can kind of throw yourself into some kind of creative thinking, thought, adventure, it allows you to be able to kind of reflect in such a way that, hopefully you wouldn't have to go and kill lots of people in real life to have that kind of eureka moment, that you've had that kind of moment in kind of this creative play, this adventure thing as well. Thank you, Tim, for tonight. Thank you, folks, for joining in. And next week, we're going to be doing more crafty and I think liner cutting, because I realise we've gone in a certain direction, and this is going to come back to more kind of core kind of geekiness and crafting, and I kind of look forward to these sort of things. So if you want to share some stuff that you've been doing, like David, put it in our Discord or leave a comment or get in touch with me if you're friends with me, thank you, Tim, for tonight. Is there anything left for you to say before I drop you off the feed?
No, just hope you all have a good week.
Bless you, and you too. And yes, just leaves me to say thank you, folks. Thank you for watching as always. If you are catching up in the week, feel free to be part of our Discord as well, so we can chat through things as you go along. And also just leave maybe comments in the last broadcast, and I'll try and catch up on those if I remember to. But please do continue to join in the conversation, join in the stream, and whatever you go up to this week, I hope you can geek safe. I hope you all the best, and until we geek again, that would be hilarious. Not, but bless you, have a good time, and see you next week before we have a summer break. Bless you, bye bye.